Morning, everyone. We're glad you're with us. Welcome to the September 22nd, 2020 meeting of Henderson County Fiscal Court. For those looking in on Facebook Live, we are also glad you're joining us this morning. Everybody looks bright-eyed and bushy-tailed on this beautiful September day, so glad you're here. And we will begin, as we always do, with an invocation. Please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, please bless and guide the decisions we make for the citizens of our county. Please look over our community. Please look over this nation, our first responders, members of the military, and all people who are trying to do good works in this nation. We ask your guidance and blessing, especially on the people in this community who are ill or suffering, struggling with the results of COVID, needing resources, trying to find a job. Help them all, please, and help us do the good work that we need to do for all of them. We say these things in Christ's name. Amen.
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 Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
I pledge
allegiance
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance
to the flag
to the flag
of the
of
United
the
United
States,
United
States
States
of
of America,
to the
and
republic
to the
to the
republic
for
republic
which it stands,
for which
which it
stands,
stands,
one nation,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
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 with liberty and justice.
with
liberty and
liberty and justice
for
for
all.
all.
Man, we're getting so much better at that on Zoom. I'm proud of you all. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Manager Southern,
Here,
Manager Putman,
Here,
Manager McCollum,
Here.
Manager Berry,
Here.
Manager Moran. I saw her say here.
Beth, you need to unmute when you get a chance.
Here.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have before you the minutes of the September 8th, 2020 fiscal court meeting. After a period of review, I'll entertain a motion to accept those.
move to accept.
Second.
We have a motion by Master Southern, a second by Master Moran. Any other corrections, clarifications, additions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. And it does sound like Master Southern has his internet delay fixed this time around. That'll be fantastic. We've got a busy agenda today and a lot of good information. So bear with us as we go through a lot of interesting stuff, touching on issues that we've all been thinking about a lot lately. And we're going to begin with a report from Missy Vanderpool from Henderson Economic Development on the money that was channeled to them through our TVA funds every year that they have been coordinating with the city to spend on upgrading the 425 bypass property as potential industrial site. With that, I'll turn it over to Missy Vanderpool.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks
Good morning.
for having me here. I don't have a whole lot to report. The funds that you guys had approved for us for this project was $103,000, and we still have $103,000 in that account, but only for a few more days. It's just a timing thing. We're expecting the invoice for that project. The work has begun and is near completion. For any of you that have driven down 425 bypass, you've seen the crews working on the gas line and they're nearing completion. So we're expecting that invoice by the end of this week, and we will pay out $100,000. There is a difference of about $3,826 that you guys had approved for this project, and that comes from a capping of a gas well that we thought we were going to have to pay for, but the state ended up capping that. So there's a difference of about $3,000 than when we officially first requested the funds. So
And that $3,000, I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Missy, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, we'll sign off on this report. I'll copy you, Judge and Kurt, and send this into the DLG.
And any unused funds roll back into the pot you can use for future projects that you bring to us to propose out of that TVA money, correct?
I am so sorry. I cannot hear my microphone. Let me turn it up. I apologize. it's all the way up and I can't hear.
Can you hear me now, Missy?
I can hear you. It's just very muffled because my air conditioner kicked on and I'm in my room and it's very loud. I'm so sorry.
I'll try to speak up. Any
Okay.
unused money rolls back into a fund and you can use it for future projects that you'll bring to us to consider.
That is correct. Yes, it doesn't go away. We are able to keep that in the fund and use it for future projects. And we would report those projects to the court to get approval.
Okay, onward and upward with the gas line. Any questions of Missy? Again, that's a city-county cooperative project and they're handling the installation. Good project. Okay, thank you very much, Missy, for that report.
Thank you.
Feel free to come visit anytime and tell us whatever great things are happening at HED. Thanks again.
We will.
I believe we have Gina Boaz with us, and she wanted to check in on a couple things, but to remind us of a loan fund that is available to small businesses right now, especially those impacted by COVID, very topical issue right now. So, take it away.
Oops. Me.
Might want to mute if you are not going
Okay,
to. Jenny, you're on mute.
Jenna Boaz.
Jenny, you're still on mute.
What do you think his is worth?
There we go.
You seen it, right? 99.
I was having some. Okay, can you hear me? I'm sorry. I was having some problems. I can't hear, so I had to use my phone. So I have to turn my phone back on in a moment. Yes, thank you so much for letting me come in this morning and speak with you all. I just wanted to let you know, as the judge said, that GRAD has recently received $3.3 million from the U.S. Economic Development Administration to offer loans to small businesses and startup businesses that were impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. The board of directors approved using these funds through a revolving loan fund to offer loans between $5,000 and $250,000 for both new and existing businesses for either retention or expansion opportunities. In light of the pandemic, the Economic Development Administration has allowed us to offer some flexibilities through our revolving loan fund, which will include 0% interest for the first year and reduced collateral. We can fund almost up to 100% of the projects, and also waived our application fee that we normally pay for any clients. Eligible uses include purchases of machinery, equipment, working capital needs, and other activities that promote industrial, commercial, tourism, and enterprise development. So you can use this with multiple different things. And I'm sorry, I won't be able to hear any questions without turning my phone back on.
I would say that all of us on the court, if you know of businesses that are in
Apologize.
need of this help, please get the word out. Missy, please spread the word about this opportunity. Some communities have been able to pool some money together for businesses, but they ran into some issues, I think, with how to do that properly. I think running it through the revolving loan fund at GRAD, which already has a structure with already has a board of directors, or at least a committee that vets these projects, is a really good way to go about it. And also it's money from CARES Act money. So it's federal monies. So it's a good situation. And Jenna, thanks for bringing that. Again, 0% interest is what I heard in the first year, which is really good. Little less stringent.
If Kirk can let me back in, I will be able to answer any questions.
Little less stringent equity requirements, and kind of a flexible set of guidelines for its use. So I think it's a good deal, and please spread the word about the availability of this. And sorry, Jenna. It's just a good program, and she wanted to make sure we were aware of it. Any questions about that I might be able to ask that Jenna might not?
Hey, Judge Butch. Our local lending institutions are the one, is that where you go to apply for this CARES Act money?
I believe you go to grad.
You do go to grad.
Jenna,
Thank you.
you're on mute. I think they can call grad for information or call Gina Boaz at grad for information, and she'll send them in the right direction. Butch, if anybody needs that phone number and can't find it for whatever reason, just call our office, have them call our office, and we'll provide them that contact info.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Judge.
Okay.
And I'll just jump in since Jenna's having some problems and her and I had a pretty lengthy conversation. We've got a flyer that has all the information, and I'm sure Jenna's going to make sure she gets that out to everybody that she's holding up. It's got some great information about who to contact. So if you're in Henderson, you're going to contact Jenna. So
Okay.
Anyway,
Good deal.
sorry to just jump in there, but thought I'd help out.
We'll spread that flyer around, and
All right.
I will forward that flyer to the members of fiscal court to distribute as you see fit. If you know anybody, it can really help. And getting businesses through this tough time is a real priority.
You sent the copy, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just to let you
Okay.
know, Judge, the copy of the flyer and the information went out to all the court with the
Excellent.
packets. So
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes,
Please distribute it freely.
I'm sorry, I couldn't do it on there. I had to do it on my phone. I'm sorry.
It's
So
okay.
can you hear me? Yes, and you did have a copy of the flyer, and we are going to be doing some extensive marketing, working with banks and the local communities to get this word out for all of our 7 counties.
Excellent.
what is the interest rate after the first year?
It will be 75% of the prime, which is currently like 2.44 for the remainder of the loan. Each year will adjust to 75% of prime at that time. So if prime lowers, it could be lower than that, but currently it's 2.44.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I see it. Kurt I found it, Kurt.
And that is a good point. These are loans, not grants. So
Correct.
let me get back. Okay, any other, now that Jenna's with us, without an echo, any other questions? Thank you very much. But that will allow us to segue right into the next bit of good news. And is Jennifer Albee on by the chance? Jenna, is just going to be?
I'm doing this. Yes,
Okay.
I'm doing this one too. So
You might have seen in the paper this morning, announced yesterday by the governor, that Henderson County, working with GRAD and Q Wireless, have received a $340,000 grant from the Delta Regional Authority to upgrade and improve Q Wireless equipment in our county that will have a terrific potential impact on the amount of people in our community, in our rural community especially, that have access to fairly high-speed broadband internet. And if you look at the investment synopsis that was sent to you, it kind of provides an overview of what this money is going to be able to do. As you might know, Q Wireless is the provider for the Connect GRAD network in the 7-county GRAD region. Several dozen customers exist in Henderson County. And Connect GRAD has had its fits and starts. It started out as service that was hard for some people to get. It was fairly slow, but that is improving. Both the speeds and the footprint of GRAD is improving, of Connect GRAD, excuse me. And if you look at this investment synopsis, this $340,000 will, in 3 different areas of the county, increase speeds from, say, 2 megabytes per second or 6 megabytes per second up to much faster speeds, 10 megabytes, 25 megabytes, 50 megabytes in some instances. And the upgrades will allow a couple thousand more families and businesses to have access, if they want it, to this signal. Again, it's a line of sight signal. And one of the things the money's going to do is help ConnectGrad afford the ability to raise their transmitters higher on some of the antennas that they rent space on, which cost money. It's like having a landlord. If you want the better position, you got to pay more for it. And throughout the history of ConnectGrad, it has been a service that we have worked with Q Wireless on with county subsidies, because as many of you know, private providers of internet services such as AT&T or Spectrum weigh profit motive versus the cost of taking services into certain corners of our county. And the more rural and spaced out houses are, the less financial sense it makes for companies that are operating off pure profit motive, understandably. ConnectGrad was always seen as a partnership with Q Wireless, which is a private company, which also needs to make a profit. But in trading out the desire for the counties to have service to rural customers, we've agreed to help subsidize ConnectGrad's cost, or Q Wireless's cost, in some of these build outs and infrastructure improvements. Thankfully, in this case, we're going to be using an investment from DRA to help them do this. So it's exciting, along with potentially what Kenergy is going to be able to provide. We, in the next 12 months, could go from having almost no options for many rural residents of this county to having several options, both in speeds, price points, manner of delivery. And Jenna, I know you're on here to help explain this with me, but am I doing a good job so far?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So the improvements that this money is going to help underwrite are really exciting to me. And I know many of you, if not all of the fiscal court, hear often about the availability of internet service in the county, and not just internet service, but of speeds that will allow them to stream video and get on virtual classrooms, work from home, or just have access, period. And as you can see, the increase in speeds with some of this upgraded equipment is really satisfying to me. And I hope this can reach as many families, new families and households and businesses as this list spells out. So the good thing about this loan is it's a this investment, it's a pass through. It's going to go directly to Q Wireless. We work with Grad to create the scope of work for the DRA to review. The money will be passing through fiscal court, so we'll have reporting from Q Wireless to make sure they are on task. And because it's not a huge construction project, they're merely going to be using existing locations to upgrade and heighten their antenna. We should be able to get this done within the year, maybe even sooner than that. So there's not a lot of lag time here. So before I ramble on anymore, Jenna, anything to add to that?
No, I believe you have the resolution.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, that sounds exactly what it's for. We're very happy we're able to, that you all received that.
And again, I'm sorry, go ahead, Charlie.
Where is the Sugar Tree, Henderson South Towers, and where is the WSTO tower going to be?
The WSTO tower is in the far eastern end of the county. It's almost to the Davis and Henderson County line. If you drive out 60, you can't miss it. It's right by the road and it is tall. So that makes a good location for transmitting the signal. Sugar Tree is, to be honest, I'm not sure the exact location. But for instance, right now, my house in Happy Acres is partly served by Sugar Tree. So I'm a customer of ConnectGrad at the moment, Q Wireless. And even currently, we get speeds anywhere from 15 to 20 megabytes per second regularly. And if this increases both the speed and the area of available signal, that's terrific. But I'm not sure exactly where that Sugar Tree location is.
What about the Henderson South Tower? Is that the same thing?
No, Jenna, do you have any idea where that South Tower is?
No, I'm sorry, I do not.
One of them, I think, is on the top of the water tank at 4-Star Industrial Park. Is that correct? You know, we made an effort to get one of the principals from Q Wireless to come on, and we could not reach them in time. But Charlie, I can get you that information exactly if you want. I've seen maps before of where these towers are, and I would say that the WSTO tower is actually a new location for them. So that's good too, because that is a tall tower. And Q Wireless talks all the time about the need for what they call vertical real estate. And that is tall towers on which they can put their antennas. And they don't have enough capital, enough wherewithal to put up these towers themselves. They're very expensive. So they rent space on existing towers. And that's part of their expenses, that lease money. So, and the higher you go, the more expensive it gets.
I think one of the towers is right there at Anthoston, and I think that's the one you're shooting off of. I think so, but that if my memory serves me right, but I wasn't sure.
And I do believe, Charles, that the 3 towers they've identified are kind of strategically placed. They're not all concentrated in one corner of the county. So
Right.
this will be hitting, hopefully improving service in several different parts of the county.
Sounds good.
And another aspect of this is there are some, if I'm not mistaken, there are some households out in the county that are not Kinergy customers. I think they may be Kentucky Utility customers.
That's
So,
correct.
Even if they're not able to take advantage, if Kinergy follows through on its plan to provide internet service to its network of customers, we still may have an option for higher speeds to people who are on the KU network and don't have access to Kinergy. So again, the more options we can give people, the better. And within the next year, hopefully, we're going to be offering them multiple options. So,
Judge, yeah, I can find out specifically where those are located. I was not involved in writing this application, so I'm really not for sure, but I will let you know so that you can pass it on. And on the information I have, it's not listed the exact location, but we'll find that out.
and just to reiterate, this potentially will increase the number of houses and businesses covered. There we go. There we go. Charlie, can you see that?
I can.
Oh, good.
So you see where Sugar Tree is, western end of the county?
Yes, that's I see. That's
Henderson
great.
South, I think, is the one you're talking about near Anthoston.
And the Audubon one.
Audubon, I think that's STO.
Yeah, Sugar Tree is a cell tower. And so is the Henderson South, yeah.
Actually, I think Sugar Tree is out on Midway Road, next to the water tower.
Yeah, it's right past that. It's on my great-grandfather's old farm, where that is.
Right. Right off 266.
Right.
6 gap between spots filling. Over.
Thank you to Brent Jacobs for pulling that map up. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Brent.
There.
Okay. We do have a resolution to accept a grant and spells out what we need to do with it. Without any other questions, I'd like the clerk to read it.
Whereas Delta Regional Authority herein after DRA was created by Congress by the Delta Regional Authority Act of 2000 as amended as a federal state partnership now comprised of 252 counties and parishes within 8 states of Alabama, Arkansas, Illinois, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, and Tennessee, in order to remedy severe and chronic economic distress by stimulating economic development and fostering partnerships that will have a positive impact on the Delta region's economy. And whereas the Henderson County Fiscal Court, acting by and through its fiscal court, proposes to apply for award with DRA for the fiscal year 2020 federal award program cycle. And whereas DRA requires that a person be designated, appointed, and given the authority to perform certain duties in administration of said award for and on behalf of the awardee. And whereas the Henderson County Fiscal Court met in regular session on 22 September, whereby Masters Berry, McCollum, Moran, Putnam, Southard were present, constituting a quorum. And now therefore be it resolved that by the Fiscal Court of Henderson County as follows. That Judge Brad Schneider be designated and appointed to perform on behalf of Henderson County, having the authority to make these acts and assume any and all duties in dealing with the award for DRA for the fiscal year 2020 federal award program cycle. That Judge Brad Schneider be authorized to execute and submit any and all documents, including but not limited to applications, award closing documents, requests for funds, status reports to DRA for the fiscal year 2020 federal award program cycle. That in the event of administrative change, the new judge shall continue to have such authority under this resolution.
Make a motion to approve. Oh, I'm sorry.
If you have that resolution in front of you, you'll see there is two different motions to be made on this. First one is to allow Judge Schneider to perform all duties and administration of said award. And the second one is to, in the event of administration change, that the new judge shall continue to have the same authority.
Make a motion to allow Brad to do whatever he needs to do.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Charles McCollum. I'll give the second to Magistrate Southard. And then there's another motion to allow any succeeding judge to continue that authority.
So move.
Are we gonna,
We have a
Vote on-
motion by Master Putman and a second by Master Moran. We'll vote on the first motion. All those in favor say aye.
aye,
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll vote on the second motion. All those in favor say aye.
aye,
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unusual. Thanks for your patience there. I did, before that map came up, which was very informative, and I thank Brent again for pulling that up. I wanted to reiterate for those watching and hopefully for any media looking in, this is how this project benefits. I want to read this again. The current coverage for Connect Grad in Henderson County, this is the eligible households covered by a signal, or businesses are 3,393. That's their current signal footprint. And this upgrade will increase speeds for those houses. And after the upgrades are completed, the number of additional households and businesses covered will jump up to 7,121, which is terrific. And for a total of 10,514 businesses and households in the coverage area eligible or potentially can access this increased coverage. So just wanted to read that. Good work.
Brad, if I could just ask, if somebody out there wants to get on this service or check on it, who do they have to contact?
They can either contact Grad or Q Wireless directly. And they can come to our office to get those numbers or call the Grad office to get them started in registering for that service. The first thing they need is a test to see what the signal looks like at their house, but Q Wireless can obviously take care of that. And when they complete their upgrades, I think we'll help in spreading the word. Yes, Master Son.
Me that map. Could he email that to us?
Sure. I think he got it off of the Connect Grad website or the Q Wireless website. It's a link, and I'll have him get it to you.
All right, thank you.
And just so you know, I pay about $60 a month for anywhere up to 20 megabytes per month, which is, I think, not a bad deal. And it's consistent. It's I don't notice too many fluctuations or waverings, even though it's a wireless signal. So we do not have any other options in Happy Acres other than AT&T DSL, which is very slow if you can get it, or satellite internet, which is much more expensive and historically slow. So just give you an idea.
Yeah, AT&T is pretty much maxed out, Brad.
On the DSL, absolutely. I think they offer hotspots, but only as part of phone packages, if I'm not mistaken. You can't buy it a la carte, and it might be, I think it's even more expensive than $60 a month. And it really eats up, also, if you're on a data plan, it really eats up data plans, so it can be very expensive. Okay, moving on. We have, as many of you know, the governor set aside $300 million of CARES Act funding that came to the state in order to help cities and counties recoup non-budgeted expenses related to reacting to COVID-19. And Henderson County, of that 300 million, is eligible, I think, for up to 1.4 million that we can request to recoup expenses related to coronavirus. And the first step in preparing our application to recoup some of those expenses is to pass the resolution that is in your packets. And it's a fairly simple resolution. It means we all agree we're going to do this, we're going to do it correctly. Kenny Garrett has been working with the department heads to begin to gather all the information necessary to make our first application for refunds through this pool of cash that the federal government has provided. And we've been notified by DLG that they'd like us to make an application for those funds by November 1st, Kenny, by November 1. So the first step in making sure we can get that in on time is to pass this resolution. And before I have the clerk read this, are there any questions about that? And I'll ask Kenny to come on unmute and help me answer any questions the fiscal court might have. Hearing none, I will ask the clerk to read this resolution, please.
Adoption of a resolution of the Henderson County Fiscal Court authorizing the filing of Coronavirus Relief Fund application for reimbursement of incurred expenses in CRF funds with the Department for Local Government, authorizing and directing the county judge executive to execute any documents which are deemed necessary by DLG to reimburse the county, and authorize the judge executive to act as the authorized correspondent for reimbursement. Whereas Henderson County desires reimbursement for expenses incurred due to the public health emergency with respect to the coronavirus disease 2019, COVID-19, on behalf of the residents of the county. And whereas it is recognized that the CRF funds are available to Henderson County pursuant to Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, the CARES Act, and impose certain obligations and responsibilities upon the county that require, among other things, one, approval of satisfactory application by the county transmitted to DLG for approval, and two, other obligations of the county in connection with receiving the CRF funds for the purposes stated herein. Now therefore be it resolved this 22nd day of September 2020 by Henderson County Fiscal Court that a CRF application on behalf of the county for CRF funds for reimbursement of expenses incurred by the county due to the public health emergency with respect to COVID-19 shall be submitted to DLG. The county judge executive shall provide such additional information and furnish such documentation as may be required, and authorize the county judge executive to act as the authorized correspondent for reimbursement.
Can I get a motion to approve that?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion from Master McCullum, a second by Master Southard, and I will say that we really appreciate the governor and the legislature approving this pot of funding to help counties and cities recoup this money. It's going to help our bottom line, no doubt. So with that, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Next, I'm going to ask Brian Bishop from the Planning Commission to join us. And for the benefit of the people watching it on Facebook, we had a workshop last week to discuss suggested improvements, I think, and alterations, and offered changes to the zoning ordinances in our county. That it was a joint workshop of both members of the Planning Commission and Fiscal Court. Brian Bishop and Jennifer, his assistant there, made a great presentation, and we discussed a lot of things. And I'd like him to come back on today and quickly go through the PowerPoint that he presented to us and remind us of the suggested changes that we made after our discussion. And then we will create the beginning of accepting these changes and sending the updated zoning ordinances back to the commission to vet for us and eventually come back to the fiscal court and approve. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian, and hopefully we can get through this fairly concisely, but I know there's a lot of information here. So good luck, Brian.
Thanks, Judge. I'll do my best. Kurt, I emailed you the PowerPoint. Is it best for you guys to share that, or is there another way to do it? Or would you guys like for me just to go through the slides and tell you about them?
If you can want to share it from there, it'd be easier. Then you can just change slides as you need to.
Okay. Brent, how's the best way to do that? Can you guys share the screen to me?
You can share it yourself.
Okay, I'll tell you what, give me 1 second and I will have that ready.
Brian, I'll come help you. The magic of computers.
Guys, can you see the screen?
No.
No, because it would be where our faces are.
Okay.
I need that for a second.
So here, grab your chair.
Calling in the professional.
Oh, that's what you had to do.
Just dragging.
How about that?
Nope.
No,
Working on it.
No.
Working on it, boss. Just a second. We have too much technology in this room.
Oh, wait, you need to click on that button on the bottom that says share screen.
Maybe. Atta baby, Jennifer. Atta way.
that made sense.
Sorry. I forget that.
How about that? Is that better?
No,
No.
All right.
I forget the mics.
One more second. Because you have the dual screens. Yep.
You know, Zoom giveth and Zoom taketh away.
You want to talk about something else and come back to this in a second?
Um,
I'm almost done. I hope.
we can move on to some other items and come back to you if you want.
Yep, that's good.
Let's skip down to animal control reports. I don't think, yes, Debbie, you're there with us. Want to unmute and say anything you'd like about your report?
Good morning, guys. You guys have all got the financials previously sent to you. I don't really have a lot of updates today. We did hire a new animal control officer though. So the profit that you do see on the financials will probably be a little different next month. This girl is a dog trainer, so we're pretty excited to have her experience on staff, and she also has a lot of livestock experience, which could really help us out a lot. So we are moving right along here.
Terrific. Any questions of Debbie? Glad to hear you got a new animal control officer.
Yay!
I know you might have lost your marketing director, and I hope you can fill that void, but or something
She
similar.
will definitely be missed. We will be posting that very soon as well.
If there are no other questions of Debbie, I will ask the court to review and offer a motion to accept the sheriff's monthly reports. If I think I saw, yeah, David Crafton, anything to add to the sheriff's reports?
No, I don't have anything else.
Judge, I'd make a motion, we accept those reports.
Second.
We have a motion
Second.
from Magistrate Putman, second by Magistrate Moran to accept the sheriff's reports. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
I couldn't see for some reason. I had still had the damn sign.
You also have the, well, we also have the county clerk's report. Mr. Weason, if you want to add anything to that, or Renisa, if you want to add anything to your report.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Busy day. We are doing well in the clerk's office. Our report, we are, if we compare it to last August, we are total paid to the county is up $31,000. So we're doing very well, even through the pandemic. So we are continuing to serve the customers, continuing to collect funds, and yeah, we're doing great. So any questions?
Renisa, thank you for what you do.
Thank you. And also our voting, we're having an election. So that's coming up, and I can talk about that at the end if you want, Judge.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve her report.
Well, you want to, Mr. Clerk, you want to read the numbers real quick?
Caught me off guard there. We don't usually do that.
Oh, sorry. Renisa usually does that. Yeah.
I can do it. I can do it. Fees for total excess fees for the month of August, $132,041.97, and total remitted to the county for August, $181,710.25.
Motion to accept.
Second.
I have a motion by Master McCollum, second by Master Southern. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I think Butch is the one that seconded that.
Yeah, let's correct that. Magistrate Putman made this the second, and what I heard was unanimous aye.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Renisa. Brian Bishop, any progress?
We are ready to go, sir.
Okay. Amy, Jayla Brady will be back to you in a moment, and Steve Gold will be back to you for a couple different items here in a second, but Brian, take it away.
Okay, guys, from here, we will share our screen. Hopefully you will see the same PowerPoint that you saw the other evening. Kenny, please make sure I do this correct.
It's share at the bottom. There you go.
All right.
Okay, does everybody see the PowerPoint?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Now, if it'll just move. There we go. Okay. So as you guys know, we talked about this in the recent history with the fiscal court and the planning commission. So the reason for this is that the planning commission and the fiscal court not have entirely looked at the document since 1982. And as everyone knows, a lot of things have changed since 1982. It's not the Reagan era anymore. The entire zoning ordinance was reviewed. We compared ourselves to the city of Owensboro, Fayette County, Lexington, Louisville, Warren County. We looked all over the states for comparisons. So from there, there was a committee formed. The chairman of the planning commission, Mr. Herb McKee, and the judge settled on some names, people that would be good to review the documents with us. So that was Herb McKee, David Dixon, David Williams, planning commission member Dickie Johnson, magistrate Tim Southard, and citizen at large member Dennis Branson. So those folks, in addition to the planning commission staff, myself, Jennifer and Claudia, the Henderson County attorney and staff, Mr. Steve Gold, and Ashley Hampton did a ton of work. She should get a lot of credit for that. She did awesome. We also worked with the county coach administrator, Randy Tossa, the county engineer, Bill Hubiak, and we also had outside help from Andy Rideout, Whitney Smith, and Andrew Powell. So it was a good team effort. The process is ongoing. The update committee reviewed this document. We then went to the work session, which we all were at. From there, the origination will occur with the fiscal court. Then once that is done, it goes to the planning commission where we will hold at least one public hearing. If it is a positive recommendation, that recommendation would go back to the fiscal court for adoption. If it is a negative recommendation, it goes back to the fiscal court and you can choose to either adopt or deny. You have all the power at that point. So the quick version is we've added terms such as agritourism, bed and breakfast, tourism destination. We also created a new rural residential district. We wanted to generate flexibility in the zoning. Like I said before, a lot of stuff has changed. Things are different and fluid. So what we did is try to make it flexible so that the power goes to the Board of Zoning Adjustment so we can find a happy balance between maximizing one parcel and then protecting the property adjoiners. So that way we can find a happy medium. Some of the other things we looked at would be Airbnbs, the minimum lot size and road frontage requirements, and manufactured home standards. The big one is agritourism. It's hard to define, but you know it when you see it. One of the things that we would say is a good example is Blue Moon Stables, Kate's Farms. Wineries are always a good example of agritourism. So that's kind of what your thought process should be towards that definition. Again, farming, ranching, anything that you can do on large agricultural tracts is going to be agritourism related. Why agritourism? Because it generates a lot of revenue for the state of Kentucky. In 2017, nearly $1 billion was generated, and that does not include income from wineries. So $950 million was generated by this industry and did not include wineries. So it is a huge economic driver for the state of Kentucky. This would go to the Board of Zoning Adjustment. Again, we're looking for flexibility. We want these folks to be able to maximize their property, but the Board of Zoning Adjustment gives protection to the property adjoiners and that they can have input on things like hours of operation, the loudness of music, anything that would cause a disruption to the property adjoiners. Bed and breakfast inn is a very similar situation. These are structures that can be used for small inns that we would kind of traditionally see in tourist destinations. We again requested that this be a conditional use permit, and the logic is exactly the same. Maximize one property while protecting the other. This goes to the Board of Zoning Adjustment so that the neighbors can have input. We also request that, or we will ask that the applicant make sure that they pay all applicable taxes. I'm sure Brent would appreciate that when dealing with income tax for the county. The last thing we're going to touch on in this vein is tourist destination. Again, this is something that we would not traditionally think of. This is kind of thinking outside the box a little bit. A tourist destination could be something that is an environmental scenario, like say if we had a real beautiful view, say in the sloughs, or we had something like the OT house on Highway 60 that could generate tourism. We wanted to give the flexibility for the people of Henderson to do that. But again, we're going to request that it be a conditional use in the ag zone, which goes to the Board of Zoning Adjustment.
Hey, Brian, can I interrupt you for a moment?
Yes, sir.
Just so anybody looking in will understand, even though we showed a picture, for example, of L&N Bed and Breakfast, these ordinances are not the ordinances that exist inside the city limits. These are for the ordinance that exist in the county that we don't necessarily have, we haven't covered yet. We don't have an ordinance for, or we have an ordinance that was written years ago that may need to be updated. Is that correct, Brian?
Yes, sir, that's correct. The zoning ordinance has not been fully looked at since 1982.
So again, you may see pictures of city businesses, but that's only because perhaps that's the only bed and breakfast picture that Brian could have found. If somebody wanted to open up a bed and breakfast in the county, that's what we're addressing with these updated ordinances now. So Brian, with that, I'll.
Yeah, no problem. And with that picture, it just seemed like a good idea to give a little local plug.
Yeah.
There. So tourist destination, a lot of times in my mind there, I was thinking Ellis Park, the tea house, I think Mr. Gold brought up would be a good example of that. Short-term rental. This is basically what people commonly call Airbnbs, which are very popular in today's world. We thought this might be something that comes up, say, during the Handy Festival or the Sandy Lee Songwriters Festival. This gives the flexibility to lease someone's home out, but again, it protects the neighbors. And this again would go to the border zoning adjustment. This would be allowed in the residential 1, 2, and 3 zones and the ag zone. Basically, we want the neighbors to be protected here is the whole cause for all that. The big ticket item is rural residential. This is an entirely new zone being proposed. We are trying to find a common ground between the ag zone, which you'll see a lot of commercial ag type businesses. You can see anything like oil wells, large farming operations, and make that connect to the residential zones, which are going to be one family dominant. So this is a buffer zone in between. And if you would remember this subdivision that you'll see on the screen, this is Bluegrass Estates. This is going to be an example of why we think this is important. Some of the uses in this zone would be single family dwellings. We would like to limit this to 1 to 5 acres so it keeps in with the feel of our ideas that it's a buffer zone in between, not large ag tracts, but not small residential lots as well. Things that you would see on there would be conditional uses for manufactured homes, the keeping of livestock, that which would be for personal use. We're not looking at commercial endeavors here. And then home occupations as defined in the county's zoning ordinance. Everybody good so far? I know this is kind of we're going through this really fast. So this is Bluegrass Estates. The lots you'll see in 11 were all cut off from the original parent tract. So they were all at least 1 acre or more at the time. I believe the smallest is roughly 1.3. And some of the largers are 2.5 to 3 acres. But if you look at this map, you're going to notice that there's some white and yellow shading. The parcels in white are all zoned ag. The parcels in yellow are zoned R1. Now keep in mind, these all came from the original tract. But the Planning Commission has a policy, which is rightfully so in certain cases, is that when you get into a major subdivision like this, which is more than 5 lots cut off a single parent tract, that we would rezone to R1, which works great in neighborhoods such like Bent Creek, where you have interior streets and smaller condensed lots. But in a subdivision like this, it makes little sense to have, say, lot 6 that was forced to zone R1 right next door to lot 5, which stays ag, the exact same size. In that scenario, lot 6 cannot have a horse. They cannot have chickens for their own personal use, but lot 5 could. They could be the exact same lot size right next to each other. And then zoning is what changes that. So in this scenario, if someone wanted to create the subdivision, they could rezone to the rural residential and give greater flexibility to everyone in the subdivision. Now, that being said, we also built in the protection of the conditional use permit again, which goes to the border zoning adjustment. So if lot 6 wanted chickens and they did not want to disrupt their neighbors, they could still have a conditional use permit and then they would work it out that way. It gives an avenue for the citizens to work the issues out in the border zoning adjustment.
Ryan, if you want me to take a moment to review this, because it's complicated and I want just average folks to kind of understand what the Planning Commission is proposing, the committee is proposing, is this for new development, not existing development, but for new development, to use this designation. And if you can remind me, if you can go back a slide, Brian.
Yeah. Rural residential.
Rural residential.
Mm-hmm.
This is to keep developments that butt up against large farming operations from being a dense residential area right next to large farms.
Yes, in a sense. And plus it generates the flexibility for folks to have livestock. They can still live in a quasi-residential neighborhood, but they still have some of the advantages of living what some folks call country life. They have the agricultural uses of, horses and things like that.
It is a compromise designation between what you call R1, residential. Correct. 1, which is your basic home lot, which doesn't have some of this flexibility, and large farms, pure.
Correct. Yeah, we like to call it a buffer zone.
Yeah.
A bridge, so to speak.
It's kind of a mix of the two.
Correct.
And it will help people, not have a small, dense neighborhood up against a large farm in the future. And B, it will also allow people with homes to have some, like you said, live animals.
Yes.
Things like that.
Absolutely. It's a way to generate flexibility that we sought so much.
Mr. Bishop, if I may, I'd just like to clarify that no one will be forced into this rural residential. This is a choice for a developer, right?
Correct. This is an entirely new zone. There was no retro zoning for this in a sense. This would be an entirely new zone that people could take advantage of from the moment it's passed moving forward. We did not retroactively rezone anyone.
But they would not have to. They could still choose ag or R1.
Absolutely.
As long as they wanted to fit into those, right?
Absolutely. We're trying to create flexibility again.
Brian, if I could, this is Charlie.
Yes, sir.
If you're in an R1, you cannot have chickens, is that correct?
That is correct, sir. No livestock of any sort.
Even as a conditional use, even if you don't have roosters?
No, sir, not at this time.
I mean, there's a lot of counties and even cities that are allowing you to have chickens without roosters. Have you checked on that?
We talked about that internally. That we thought it was more difficult to go back and try to retrofit the zones. So we thought it'd be easier to create the new zone so someone could come in and rezone from there, because it killed two birds with one stone. It allowed what you were asking, and it helped us fix the problems we have with the major subdivisions, as in bluegrass estates. So we try to kill two birds with one stone there.
Okay, well, I mean, where Rand Paul lives, he's in a gated community in Bowling Green, and they have chickens. Just doesn't seem that offensive that you limit people to, when they've got a 2 or 3, 4 acre piece of property. That's just my.
Oh, Charlie, we debated that very much. And that's why the conditional use is the way to go a lot of times, because it allows one person to maximize their property while giving the benefit of the review, so to speak, of the neighbors. We agree entirely with principle. We just thought it would be better to kill two birds with one stone there.
So now if somebody wanted to do that, they could come in and apply to change their R1 to this rural residential?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that's still an option. Like a lot of times, Charlie, like say, for example, Broadview, I believe
Right.
in R1 and R2 zone.
Right.
When we had our internal discussions, that's maybe not the best place for rural residential because the lots are so much smaller. Or say, for example, I'm trying to think, the country club, maybe not so much there because it's a dense subdivision, but
Right.
we wanted that option to be there. And plus it helps us with folks that live out in the county that may be R1 through the policy of the planning commission, not through their own doing. It gave us more tools in our toolbox to work with, so to speak.
Okay. Well, I mean, where Rand Paul lives down in Bowling Green, I mean, they've got $1 million homes.
Yeah.
And they've got really neat looking chicken houses. I mean, it's pretty,
yeah.
I mean, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's definitely getting more common.
Yeah.
And to clarify, if you want to change from R1 to this new designation, you still have that 1 acre minimum lot size to meet, right?
Correct. 1 to 5. And Judge, and that's where we relied heavily on Andy Rideout through the Ag Extension Office. We would defer to them a lot of times when it came to that type of information because that's just not our wheelhouse. We're not dealing with that every day. And they have lots of literature that can give best practice management for that type of scenario. So we really thought about that a lot. We did not want to willy-nilly just make this up. So we put some thought into it.
He gave you some advice on the required amount of land to support.
Correct. But he also says that those are not the end all be all, so to speak. So for example, that's why the border zoning adjustment becomes so important. The folks can come in and lay out their plan. That way they still get to do what they want on their property, but they're still protecting their neighbors.
They get to do what they want if the Board of Zoning Adjustment agrees.
Correct. If they work out an agreement, and that's not the right way to say it, but there's basically a balance. They maximize their property, but then the neighbors still have some input because it could adversely affect their property as well.
Yes.
Everybody good with that? Then the other one, this one gets a little murky and it's harder to talk about over Zoom, non-conforming uses and structures. This is something that Randy would probably deal with more than anybody. A lot of times you have non-conforming uses that are businesses that have operated for years and they operated prior to the adoption of zoning. So like, for example, if someone had a piece of property on Highway 60 that had always been a gas station, but it was zoned agricultural, that's a non-conforming use. And when someone were to upgrade that or enlarge it, they would have to come in compliance. But the flip side of that is, say, if it were damaged by fire, they only had 1 year to replace it or to rebuild it. We have added language in there that would extend that to 18 months. KRS allows you to up to 24 months to do that. We felt that that was too long, but 18 months is a good, reasonable middle ground, because a lot of times when these folks deal with insurance claims, natural disaster claims, they have to deal with insurance, and that can take a long time. So we did not want to handcuff folks with a 1 year window trying to get something replaced after they've already had a very traumatic event happen to them. Non-conforming structures, very similar. Basically, non-conforming structures are something we don't want to encourage, but they exist. So we added language in there that would allow people to add on to a certain extent and do proper maintenance so that it can legally exist and continue to be used. Steve, is anything you want to jump in there? I know that gets into the legal waters and gets a little murky.
I think you explained it about as well as it can be concisely. Otherwise, everybody would need to settle in for a long time.
Yeah, it's the legalese we try to avoid there. The other one of the big ticket items I like to call is the minimum lot size. Currently, it's 1 acre, which is 43,560 feet. The minimum lot width is 100. The proposed lot size that we are suggesting is dialing that back a little bit, which is 3/4 of an acre, which is 32,670 square feet. And the minimum lot width would go back to 50, which is what it was in the 2012, 2013 era when things were updated.
And this will help drive down costs for home builders.
I believe so, Judge. And that's what our thought process was there. So what we did is we looked at some of the existing neighborhoods that we have, and we specifically chose the corridor between 351 and Highway 60 because that's where we're seeing the majority of lots created. So in that area or that range or area, we chose 4 subdivisions: Thornridge, the Country Club, Spring Garden, and Holloway Hills. Those are the most recent large traditional type subdivisions that we've had. The average lot size in that subdivision is 0.87 acres, which is slightly above the 0.75 that we're proposing. So we feel like we're in the wheelhouse of what's happened in the past.
Brian, you want to go back a slide there to the columns? You want to better explain what they're looking at here?
Absolutely. So you'll see 4 separate subdivisions on display there. The column on the left of each one is the largest lot in that subdivision.
Okay.
The middle bar is the smallest lot in that subdivision. And then the third bar is the average lot in that subdivision. So for example, Thornridge has a largest lot of 1.6, the smallest lot of 0.54, and 0.93 is the average. The Country Club, I'm sorry, Judge.
So 3 of the 4 have average lot sizes that are less than the current requirement of 1 acre.
Correct.
Your point.
Correct.
So and these subdivisions were put in before that 1 acre minimum was put in place, correct? Obviously.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Back then, Judge, the minimum lot size was 15,000 square feet, which I think we all believe is too small because it does not give adequate space for septic systems if there's a failure and a replacement. So this is where we leaned on Whitney Smith from the health department to come up with a number that would work for the county. And
well, the reason the health department's involved is because some of the lot sizes, the lot size consideration includes the ability to put in a field bed for a septic system and potentially put in a second one in the future.
Correct.
If the first one becomes unusable. And I think what this graph shows is that current lots, which have worked well for our community and for homeowners, tend to be less than the current 1 acre minimum anyway.
Correct.
And so that the 3/4 lot size should work sufficiently. I just want to paraphrase for anybody watching in.
Yes, Judge, and also to add to that is the Plan Commission still has the ability to require the lots to be larger. When someone proposes a major subdivision in the county, they still have to get approval from the health department. So for example, if someone wanted to duplicate Spring Garden subdivision and the ground was not suitable for septic systems, we could still require that the lots be larger. We still have that flexibility to do that. We're just trying to do something that would make it more economically viable to develop subdivisions in the county.
Another example would be if somebody wanted to put a gigantic 5,000 square foot house on a 3/4 acre piece of ground, it may not be feasible because of health department concerns. Is that right?
Absolutely. The health department still has authority there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, this is Thornridge subdivision. I believe there's roughly 57 lots there. Can everyone see the yellow lines? I know it's going to be hard to see in the display. So right now, Thornridge generates $192,569.64 worth of property taxes in the 2019 range. So today, if someone wanted to recreate Thornridge, they would lose 42 of the 57 lots, which you'll see highlighted. That
Under
would
the
mean
current,
under
the current zoning restrictions.
Yeah, the current lot restrictions, if someone wanted to recreate Thornridge, they cannot do it. 42 of the 57 parcels could not be created based on the lot size, which means the county could potentially lose $135,395.67. So that could be more revenue coming in, new housing starts, new building permits, everything that the county could be using right now.
And we lose out on the employment of the people that build the homes too.
Absolutely. And I know Brent would like to have that income when it comes to net revenue. Okay. Everybody good on the Thornridge portion? Okay. Next, we'll go to the country club. So the country club has approximately 97 lots generating $282,101.14. So if you look at the map now, 96 out of 97 lots of the country club cannot be developed by today's regulations. That would be $279,114.62.
Brian, are you going to show us what could develop with our changes?
We can. I didn't want to get into that, Charlie, just because there's so many variables when you get in a lot width. We still have a 3-to-1 ratio. It forces us to get creative and show you things that may not be real world applicable. But if you guys would like, I can certainly come up with some scenarios and give you an example.
I think it'd be good to get an idea of what we could, what the developer could come back and put in based by reducing. I think reducing that road frontage is going to be your big thing, isn't it?
It is. That's the one thing that we have talked about a lot. I know Bill has some strong feelings about that. Our internal discussions were this. So for example, Spring Garden subdivision that you'll see on the screen here, the road right away there is 50 feet wide. So the logic that I was employing was, why does the lot width need to be double of the entire roadway that has streets, the roads, storm sewer, everything? If it can be contained within 50 feet, why does the lot width need to be double that? And for example, on the county road, the road department would put in a culvert that's 30 feet in width. So the road width to get there is more than double the width of the culvert that they're using. And by doing that, we're taking out a lot of farmland out of production. Say, for example, if someone wanted to cut off 3 acres out of a farmland, we're forcing that stem of the lot to be 100 feet wide for no reason, in my opinion.
The lots.
So,
That doubles the runoff. Make
So-
sure stormwater sewer inlets gonna have to be more frequent, the size of the pipes.
So like say, for example, on Spring Garden Road, there's 34 lots, generating $88,477.76. By the current regulations, 29 out of 34 cannot be created, which generates $73,200.48. And then the final subdivision in that corridor is going to be Holloway Hills, which does a lot better, to be honest. It has 43 lots generating $141,409. All but 2 can be created today. And again, those road right-of-ways are 50 feet wide. So that's kind of the manufacturer, I'm sorry, the subdivision portion of it that we wanted to address, just because we feel like it would be good for the county to have more subdivisions, which obviously is going to generate more taxes, more jobs. And Missy and I have talked about this a lot. We have an underserved market, so to speak, in that we do not have enough houses. I think this would be another way to fix that. Are there any questions about that portion of it? I apologize. I ran through that really fast because I know you guys have a lot going on. Okay, not hearing anything. The last thing we probably will touch on is manufactured home standards. This is going to be a little difficult to deal with because there's a lot of moving parts here. So KRS 100-348 from the Kentucky General Assembly recognizes and affirms that property values is an adequate regulated item that local governments can do. So by doing that, we have categorized manufactured homes into 4 categories. Category A, B, C, and D. We are proposing that manufactured homes classes A and B be allowed for residential uses. Classes C and D would not be allowed for residential uses.
Can you, Brian, can you go over those classes? Oh, here you go. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Absolutely. So for example, Class A is a manufactured home which is 10 years old or less from the date of the conditional use application. So manufactured homes currently are conditional uses in the R2 and the ag zone. In the future, if everything goes as we have suggested, that would be R2, rural residential, and the ag zone. So then we add more flexibility and more places for manufactured homes. But 10 years is the number to concentrate on there. So the date that they turn in their application to Randy, that manufactured home has to be 10 years newer than that date. We would ask that all trailer tongues and hitch assemblies be removed. The home shall meet all requirements for lot, yard, and building setbacks in the zone in which they're located. They still go to the border zoning adjustment. We are requesting that they be oriented so that they are parallel to the street, not perpendicular to the street. But the border zoning adjustment has the ability to allow that rotation to happen. And this would be necessary on narrow lots. Say, for example, if there's a non-conforming lot out there that's smaller than it is, like say, for example, if the lot is not as wide as the mobile home, the border zoning adjustment can still allow that to be rotated. Class B manufactured homes are going to be manufactured homes from that same 10-year date back to 1976. 1976 is a big date because that is when HUD actually started the standard for manufactured homes. That is a finite number that we can hang our hat on, and that's why we chose that. So again, the same requirements as far as aesthetics go there. The trailer and tongue would be removed. All the requirements for setbacks, yards, everything stays the same there. The big thing there is the 10 years. Class C and D are manufactured homes that would be 76 and older for Class C, but they would still have a HUD seal on them. Class D is a manufactured home that has no HUD seal on it. For the safety of the people of Henderson County, we do not feel like those are adequate to support human habitat. Which kind of leads us to our change. We have requested via the meeting that we had that we add one more section to the zoning ordinance, one more caveat. That would be a home must pass the housing quality standards inspection from HUD, the minimum standard to meet safety and sanitary housing for the citizens of Henderson County. Jennifer, if I mess this up, please jump in. We discussed this with Miss Bobby Jarrett, who I think we all know. She's the department or the head of the housing department. She's very knowledgeable, and this is her suggestion. So Judge, I think this is something you care a lot about. So I will take a step back and let you jump in on that one if you'd like.
We had an interesting conversation about manufactured homes out in the county. And a couple points to make here is that this new update to the zoning ordinance would not impact current mobile homes on current parcels in the county, nor would it impact either previous or future mobile homes in mobile home parks, correct, Brian?
That is correct. Yes.
This impacts people who want to move a manufactured mobile home onto a parcel in the future. And one of the huge problems we are facing now in the county is abandoned mobile homes on parcels. Mobile homes can decrease in value so quickly that eventually they become apparently of no value, or they're rental units that become of little value, and they're easy to abandon. And county taxpayers, each year we spend quite a bit of tax money cleaning up these sites, demolishing these sites, and it is a growing problem. So creating a standard for folks who want to move mobile homes onto parcels, both using year timeframes, as Brian described, as well as these housing quality standards, should help ensure that at least it's decent housing for people that are being moved onto parcels, and they meet some sort of minimum requirements to be considered decent housing for families. And the home quality standard is something Section 8 administrators use to make sure that any manufactured or mobile home that is being proposed for Section 8 housing must meet. And these are things like, the trim and all the windows fits, the doors closed, the plumbing works, that there are no safety hazards easily identifiable in the home. And as a compromise between allowing people to have older mobile homes like 1976, you mentioned that 1976 is the cutoff for a Class B. That's still a very old manufactured home, 44 years. But if it is in good shape, if it has been maintained well, and it meets these quality standards, it can still be put on a parcel out in the county. And Bobby Jarrett described their process for making sure that mobile homes meet the HQS standard. And after some discussion, we agreed that that might be a good rule of thumb to follow, in addition to the age guideline you mentioned, also having these homes meet the home quality standards. And we will set up, if this passes, we will set up an avenue for people to get this inspection done. Both Bobby Jarrett and one of her assistants are qualified in applying this inspection, the HQS inspection. We're also going to instruct Codes Administrator Randy Tassa to get an HQS inspection accreditation to help with this. So we're not going to make it an arduous task if we can help it, Brian, to help people get this inspection done. But it is a way to make sure that these homes are livable, and also give credit to people who are taking older mobile homes and keeping them in good shape. So if I'm describing that accurately, I think it kind of synopsizes what our thinking was. And if I remember correctly, the entire court and the Planning Commission agreed that that would be a nice safeguard to add to these suggested changes to our zoning ordinances.
Judge, I believe you're right. And can I add one more thing before we move on?
Yes.
Okay. If you guys would picture back to the nonconformity uses, when the Planning Commission recommended to the fiscal court that the road frontage requirement go from 50 to 100, we created hundreds, if not thousands, of nonconformities because we changed the lot width requirement. So for example, all the lots that were created with 50 foot of road frontage prior to 2012 and 13 became non-conforming lots. So if we go back to the 50 foot of road frontage requirement, we are bringing those back into compliance. And again, those are actions that no one took upon themselves. That was the complete action of the Planning Commission and the fiscal court.
Okay, we've gone through a lot of information there.
Sorry,
again,
Judge, that's all we have.
Huh?
Judge, that's all we have. We will sit down and shut up now.
Okay. If all of our fiscal court members, you remember these conversations, we had a good workshop. It went well. I did want Brian to reiterate this for the people watching today. So thanks for your patience. We do have a resolution to take the suggestions that we brought up in the workshop, all the comments, update the document to include those, and then originate it here in fiscal court and send it back to the Planning Commission for public hearing. There's a resolution to that effect that I'm going to have the court clerk read. But before we do that, I wanted to open it up to any questions anybody might have, any comments.
I just want to thank everybody for doing this. I think this is really important.
Yep, and we are also in the process of doing this for the rest of our ordinances, and we'll be talking more about that in future fiscal court meetings and workshops. But I'm really glad the committee got through this. I know it was a tough go there for a while, but they've done a good job. So if nobody has any further comments or questions, I'm going to have the clerk read the resolution, please.
Resolution originating a text amendment of the planning and zoning ordinance pursuant to KRS 100.211, which would amend or add sections related to condominiums, use of yards for accessory buildings, variances, and conditional use permits by planning commission, limited non-conforming uses and structures, off-street parking, and loading requirements, sign and outdoor advertising displays, manufactured homes, conditional uses in highway commercial districts, creation of a rural residential district, amendments to the boundaries of flood-prone areas, and regulation of short-term property. Whereas Kentucky Revised Statute, Chapter 100, provides for the adoption of zoning text and maps, as well as providing for amendments thereof. And whereas the County of Henderson and the Henderson City County Planning Commission have recognized the need for zoning regulations that promote public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community and facilitate order and harmonious development and the visual character of the community, have enacted a comprehensive planning and zoning ordinance codified as Henderson County Code of Ordinances, Appendix A, zoning. And whereas an ad hoc committee of residents and technical advisors has met frequently over the course of the past year to make recommendations for the modernization of zoning ordinance, which are aimed at increasing landowner options for land use and encouraging responsible development while respecting rights and property values of surrounding property owners. Whereas said ad hoc committee has presented its recommendations to the Henderson Fiscal Court, obtained feedback therefrom. Fiscal Court deems it in the best interest of the Henderson County to originate and propose text amendment to the Henderson County Code of Ordinances, Appendix A, zoning pursuant to KRS 100.211 by adding or amending sections as reflected in the text of the attached document. Now therefore be it resolved that the Henderson County Fiscal Court hereby originates and proposes amendments to the text of the Henderson County Code of Ordinances, Appendix A, zoning. The proposed amendments are set forth in Exhibit A, attached here to, which is attached here to incorporated herein. This amendment is hereby referred to the Henderson City County Planning Commission as required by KRS 100.211. The Henderson City County Planning Commission shall hold at least one public hearing after proper notice and make a recommendation back to the Henderson County Fiscal Court within 60 days of the date of the receipt of the proposed text amendment.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Magistrate McCollum, a second by Magistrate Southard. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you, and we will continue the process. Mr. Gold has a presentation, and Steve, if you want to take a moment, we can speaking of killing two birds with one stone, you want to give us your county attorney payments report real quick? We'll knock that out, and then we'll move on to the ditch presentation.
Yes, sir. I've given several checks to Mr. Weeson this morning. The first is in the amount of $457.56 as dental and life insurance reimbursement, and health insurance reimbursement in the amount of $6,341, Aflac reimbursement in the amount of $124.94, a flow through from the city, $458.33. So total remitted to the county today, $7,381.83 for a fiscal year total to date, $72,212.14.
Motion to accept.
Second.
We have a motion by Master McCollum, second by Master Putman. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, with that, I will turn it over to Steve Gold, who has prepared at the request of Fiscal Court a rather information-filled presentation on the history of county drainage and everything you ever wanted to know about moving water in this community. So, Steve, there you go.
Most likely more than you ever wanted to know about drainage. In fact, I got in touch with Rich Ornstein at CAECO and asked him about what he had about drainage and ditch laws in Kentucky. And he said, Steve, in all my years of doing this, you're the first person to ever ask me about that. No, I don't have anything. So I'm referring to this as the definitive presentation on ditch laws and draining in Kentucky, because apparently it's the only one, is my understanding. So first of all, I want to thank Lawson Lambert, an assistant county attorney here in the office, who's done a ton of work on this and really dug deep into a lot of the old records that exist about drainage within Henderson County. So he learned more about drainage than he ever wanted to as well. But I know it's been a long morning already, and you've heard a lot about zoning. And if you're still awake, I'll warn you to go ahead and grab some caffeine because ditch laws aren't always exciting. And you know some of this already. If I can, let's see, I need to get this to there. Most of you, being magistrates, you hear about drainage a lot. This is something that that comes up from our constituents quite a bit. We're going to talk a little bit just about the issue of ditches and draining, the types of districts that exist, and already in Henderson County, and then some challenges to some of the current districts out there. Now, we're going to go through the different types specifically because there was questions among the fiscal court about the potential of creating some new districts, and we want to talk about those, what they are, how they would be created, how they're governed, how they're funded, and if the time comes up, how they are dissolved. So, you know, one of the phrases we hear about Henderson, and that one of the things we're proud of, is that we're on the Ohio but never in it. It's the floodless city. We sell T-shirts down at our tourism department that have that phrase in it. But as those of us that work in the county know, that only really applied to the actual city of Henderson. Never was really true with regard to the rest of Henderson County. And during that 1937 flood, where they coined that phrase, the rest of Henderson County was pretty much underwater, and it made this little peninsula that was only accessible by one road into the city. In fact, Ripley's, believe it or not, had tried to get some aerial photos to prove that because every other city had flooded. But with Henderson being high up, we did not. But with the rest of Henderson County, there was significant flooding that occurred. So we still see that, and you all hear these stories. These are from, I believe, a 1999 flood, 1998-99 flood. And then you're going to see some pictures from 2008, and then coming up as recently as 2018 and 19 flooding issues, particularly across some of our roads. And we still have certain roads in the county that you'll see situations somewhat similar to this. And I know particularly our rural magistrates get calls about these sorts of situations quite a bit. So it's still a serious issue within Henderson County. And again, also not telling you anything that you don't know here, but providing some context. The blue and the red areas here are areas within the 1% floodplain, according to the GIS. And that is a really good percentage of Henderson County that fits within those. And as you overlay that, when we're talking drainage, you'll see each of those reflected in the different ditches and creeks in Henderson County. So there have been flooding issues with regard to each of these since Henderson County has existed. It's certainly nothing new, and there's been a lot of work to help these flow. You'll notice that a great many of these ditches and creeks flow into Canoe Creek. A couple flow toward the river in other ways, toward the west, and a couple flow directly into the green, but the majority of them do end up flowing into Canoe Creek. So Henderson is not unique in this. We are a largely a river state, so there have been a lot of attempts to try to do something about drainage and give localities options to deal with this. And really those kicked into gear in high speed in the early 20th century through the mid 20th century. 1908, they had levee districts. In 1912, they created drainage districts. And I'm going to ask you to pay attention to that because that is the date for a whole lot of the districts that we have in Henderson, that law was passed. And then just a few years later, they passed drainage, levee, and reclamation districts. We all know about soil and water conservation districts. Drainage taxing districts were created in 1942, then flood control districts in 1950. Then in 1954, there was a law passed that allowed countywide surface water drainage districts. And then the watershed conservancy districts, which there are a couple of those active in Henderson County. That was done in 1956. So we're going to go through these different types and talk about them. We're going to start initially with the drainage districts that are primarily in Henderson, these KRS 267 drainage districts. And this is the point where I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Lambert. He is going to go through each of these and talk about how those are governed.
All right, since Mr. Gold is more familiar with kind of the polishes choices that you all make, if there's something he wants to add that regards that, I'm sure he'll hop back in. The first one that I'll go over is the KRS 267 drainage districts, which is what we mostly have here in Henderson now. There's 8 of these districts, I believe, that then form together for one drainage commission. The way that they were formed, some of them predate the law even, but in the KRS 267 allows any sort of drainage improvement that exists at the time to kind of be grandfathered into theirs. And I think by 1935, they had the full drainage commission for all the districts. The way that they were created back then was through a petition of the landowners within the district. I think KRS 65 has kind of updated that to registered voters in the district, but the way one would be created now would be a petition of 25% of the voters in that proposed district would bring it to fiscal court. Fiscal court would then have hearings on it and then choose to either form it or not form it. And if they did form it, they would need to provide an ordinance creating that new district. Those districts then have an election every May for their commissioner that represents that one district. And then all those commissioners then form together the drainage commission and work as one body. The one thing that's somewhat different about this as opposed to other taxing districts is these are based on the improvement. At the time that the ditch is created, there's an assessment made on how much it'll cost, and then that assessment is divided up amongst all of the plots of land in that district based on, in this case, it's kind of weird in that a person called a viewer is supposed to go out and determine what benefit each landowner gets from this district, and then they are charged accordingly based on what their percentage of benefit of the total benefit of the ditch is. Once that first assessment is made, then each year after that, they can do a maintenance assessment, but it's limited to 10% of the original assessment. And there really isn't anything in the statute that talks about inflation or anything like that, which is why some of these districts tend to bring in a fairly low amount of money because they're limited to 10% of the original assessment of a ditch made in, say, 1929. These districts are allowed to get appropriations from fiscal court if they so desire to kind of give them more funding to maintain those ditches when they need to. If once these districts are created, there is a dissolution process if it was desired to dissolve these particular districts. There's really 3 main ways. One way is just a petition of the residents of the district. If they come in with over 50% of the people in the district that want to have the district dissolved, they can do it that way. If the fiscal court decides there's no good reasons to continue it based on things they present in the petition, then it can be dissolved that way. A second possible way is administrative dissolvement under KRS 65A. This means if it's been inactive for 2 years, if they haven't filed the appropriate paperwork with DLG in the last 2 years, if the Board of Commissioners themselves unanimously votes to dissolve the district, then it can be dissolved that way. This does involve a whole process where if you're going to do it that way, you have to give notice to the county that this is happening and a lot of hearing and processes, and it can be kind of long and messy, but that is one potential way to dissolve the district. There's a question that Judge Schneider asked earlier about whether not having a tax for 2 years. It does seem to be in the statute because it says the word inactive for 2 years. There's nothing in the statute that requires them to get a maintenance tax every year. They could take time off or they could lower it to a low number, it seems, but they must be active in some way, shape, or form, or else they could potentially be administratively dissolved. And the final way is if the fiscal court themselves wanted to go ahead and dissolve it, they would need to have a 2/3 vote to dissolve it. At the time that they decided to dissolve it, they would have to have a plan to take over the services and provide at least equal service that the ditch commission was providing to the residents of the district. And then that particular plan would then have a hearing. People could come and discuss how they felt about the hearing. And again, the fiscal court, if they wanted to continue the dissolution after the hearing, would have to vote 2/3 to dissolve the district. Now, there's some benefits to having these districts as opposed to some of the other ones. And the main one really is there's parts of the statute 267 that state that people can go on the land without easements. In the construction of the ditch, the contractor can enter upon the land to construct the ditch. Then later in the statute said the board has a duty to keep the improvements open, free from obstruction, and in good repair. So you could somewhat read that to mean that they can maintain whatever it takes to maintain the ditches. And then if there's an obstruction in the ditch that's causing problems, it requires the owner to remove it. The commission can give him 30 days notice to remove it himself if it's an obstruction that he or she has helped cause. If they have not removed it after those 30 days, then the board has the right under the statute to go in and remove that obstruction and to clean out the ditch without needing the owner's permission. So that's some of the benefits of 267. That's the one that we have. If you wanted to create, mostly, that's the one that we have. If you wanted to create new districts that were similar, that's the creation process. And if you wanted to dissolve the ones that you had, that's the dissolution process. There are a few other districts to be aware of. Did I skip one? Okay. So there's the Soil and Water Conservation District. I don't really have too much to say about that because we already, have that and it's in existence. It gets appropriations from the fiscal court, or it can levy a millage tax. It gets federal and state government grants. The reason why the Soil and Water Conservation District is important when it comes to ditches is the next slide. And that's the watershed conservancy districts. We have a couple of those in Henderson now. And the way the watershed conservancy district is formed is similar in that a petition from the landowners, in this case, it says 25 or more, or if there's less than 50 landowners in the district, have to bring a petition to want a watershed conservancy district to the Soil and Water Conservation Board. And then that board will have a feasibility study and then hold a referendum amongst those owners. And if they so desire, the owners will create underneath the Soil and Water Conservation Board these watershed conservancy districts. They're allowed to have a flat rate tax to meet the budgets they need. So their ability to raise funds is a little bit easier than the previous drainage districts that we talk about. They're not as limited to, something like 10% of the original assessment. And again, their way to dissolve would be similar to, if you chose to, as to the other one, except the petitions and stuff would go to the Soil and Water Conservation Board instead of the fiscal court. The next one on this slide is KRS 268. I guess the 1912 one that we formed ours under was not considered completely the only way. So in 1918, they passed another Drainage Levy and Reclamation District Act. It's somewhat similar in that the petition comes from 25% of the voters in the proposed district if they wanted to form one. And then the fiscal court would review that. And if they agreed, would pass an ordinance that would bring about the district. After that, there's some slight differences. Instead of one commissioner per district and then an overall commission, this one doesn't have the overall commission. Each district is divided into 3 precincts. 3 precinct people are elected, and then they serve as a board for that district, and they don't really interact with the other districts according to this statute. This one, the taxation is slightly different. Instead of coming up with the overall assessment for how much the ditch is going to cost and then 10% from then on, this board would be allowed to have a uniform tax of not more than 50 cents per acre on each share of land. So they come up with an amount per acre that they think each person can contribute, and then spend that accordingly. The dissolution of this one would be somewhat different as well. Fiscal court, if it finds the district hasn't been providing the services and isn't doing the things it's supposed to do, can have a hearing on the matter and dissolve it themselves, or they can have a referendum. If 30% of the landowners provide a petition, they can have a referendum to dissolve it, and it can be voted on by the people in the district. I said, this is one that we don't have. I mean, it's potentially a slightly different version, it could potentially raise more funds than the 267 range that we have, but in a lot of ways, it's pretty similar in structure. The next one is one called a flood control district. This one, if the landowners, and this requires 70%, it's a large amount, 70% of the landowners within whatever the boundary they want to make this flood control district, they petition the Secretary of Energy and Environmental cabinet position up in Frankfurt, and then Frankfurt decides whether to adopt this flood control district. They can have a levy of up to 15 cents per $100 of assessed value. Dissolution is similar to the one that I just did before. This is one, if you all were interested in it, we could look more into this, but this is one that's not directly done through the fiscal court. It's done through the state cabinet, so I'm not sure if we need to talk too much more about that one. Levy districts, that's an older one. It's done similar to the drainage districts we had, but specifically for levies. Again, a lot of the stuff in this one is similar to the stuff that we just talked about. If you're interested in specifically districts for levies, we can talk more about that at some later date. But the creation and the dissolution is similar to the 267 and 268 that we already discussed. Now, a more modern possibility is a drainage taxing district. If nowadays, a lot of these ditch issues are going to cost a lot more than they did back then. If it turns out that the amount of revenue and income that is needed for this is more than the county is able to budget for, they can start a drainage taxing district. Upon written petition of 50% or more of the landowners within the district, and the district can be countywide or can be a specifically limited district petition, then the county judge would appoint a board of commissioners. That would be 3 landowners over 25 who do not own land in the district, which would make it difficult, I think, if it was countywide. But and then there would be a referendum on this. And if the voters, either within the district or countywide, approve, then that taxing district is established. This is like the normal taxing districts that you have for other things, like, you know, the library and stuff, where there can be a tax of up to 10 to 25 cents per acre. The one possible flaw with this one is it seems like you can raise maybe more money over time, but it's limited to 10 years. They expect you to be able to build the ditch and fund it within 10 years. It does allow you after that 10 years to then continue to maintain the ditch or to continue to provide funds for it. But at that 10-year period, you have to go through the process again and have another revote to continue it for 10 more years. One thing in this section is that it does allow, and this is something that could be important to you all, it does allow the fiscal court to create a countywide surface water drainage district, which in this case, it kind of bypasses the need to set up the special taxing district or the special ditch commission districts, although this doesn't have some of the ability to enter onto the land without easements and condemnation that the other ones have. So there's, as I said, pros and cons to all of them. But in this one, if the fiscal court decides they want to handle these drainage issues on more of a comprehensive countywide basis, they can start a water drainage district, you know, appoint a superintendent, and then pay for the ditches and the maintenance just through the general tax revenue funds that the county brings in. If you started that, it doesn't really state how you would dissolve it, but assume you would go through maybe the 65A 050 that we did with the other ones. Either administratively it's not doing its stuff, or you can do the 2/3 vote to get rid of it. So as you can see, there's a bunch of different options for drainage districts that the statutes have given. The 267 one that has the drainage commission with the one-time assessment for the amount of the ditch, and then limited to 10% each year after that for maintenance, is the one that we have for most of our districts. There are the other options. A lot of them are similar. This one countywide surface drainage district is the one that would allow the fiscal court to have maybe more total control over how much money goes in and make it more of a comprehensive plan that ties all of the ditches together. That is the part of the work that I did.
As many of you know, we also have the Henderson City County Flood Mitigation Board, which is not necessarily a specific statute regarding drainage. It's a creature of the Interlocal Cooperation Act. And so it's an interlocal agreement specifically dealing with Canoe Creek and its tributaries. And that's governed by a board that's the county judge, the mayor, a magistrate, a city commissioner, the Canoe Creek Task Force chair, a representative from the Henderson Water Utility, and another member of the task force. And they don't have independent taxing authority. They get state, federal, local grants and funds from the city and county budget. And it is set to automatically renew with 5-year terms through 2032 unless one of the parties pulls out. So let's talk about what we have existing in Henderson right now. As Lawson said, those very first ones that he talked about were the drainage districts, those 1912 Act districts under KRS 267. Very large percentage of those that we have in Henderson are those. However, Grassy Pond, Pond Creek, and Highland Creek are watershed districts under the Soil and Water Conservation District. And as you'll note, there was at some point Washburn Creek that district disappeared at some point from the minutes, and we're not sure exactly what happened to it, but it has been dissolved. So you'll see those top several ones there are all part of the commission that exists, and we're going to talk a little bit about those commissions. But here's what's occurring right now with the status of these districts. Thanks to Andrew Powell for getting us this information. This shows the number of parcels, the assessment, not what was actually collected, but the assessment for each of the districts and the average bill. Those top three there with the asterisk are the watershed districts. The bottom ones are the ones that are part of the Henderson County Board of Drainage, the Drainage Commission. And you'll see what the average bill there is typically where, you know, it goes anywhere from around $10 to around a little over $30 for average bills. And among the commission, this is taking out the watershed districts. This is the amount of money actually raised in fiscal year 20, thanks to Kurt Wiesen for this information. The total raised for the commission was $7,283.37. And you'll see here how those were distributed as far as where the funds came from. And the general is what was allocated to each of them pay an administrative fee to the commission. A small percent goes to that to basically cover the bare minimum of compliance and keeping them going. So those existing drainage districts, there are a few things out there that are facing the districts that make it a little bit difficult going forward. The first is that cap of 10% on the maintenance assessments, since they're not ad valorem taxes and it's 10% of the original project cost. That's a little bit hampering for them, but probably even bigger to bite off is that there are some assessment irregularities. And I want to make it clear that we're not talking about issues created by the current PVA, his predecessor, or even his predecessor. These are issues that go back pushing 100 years. And nobody's exactly sure how some of these inequities got created, but I want to show you a few things about that. So first of all, this chart shows you the lighter green are the revenues for each of the districts. And then the darker green are the expenditures. And you'll see that several of them have expended more than they brought in last year. What they do is they wait till enough money builds up in their coffers to be able to do a project. And what you'll find if you talk to the folks on the Ditch Commission, they're actually really good at stretching a dollar, and they do stretch it out pretty well. But you'll see that they target those expenditures in certain districts where they believe are most in need. So it's that same chart, but we've added a third column. That third column you see there is their current balance as of August 15th of this year. So several of them do actually have a reasonable amount of money in their coffers, and they do have an ability to complete some projects. So even those ones that on this previous one where you see they're spending more than they brought in last year, they still have a reasonable amount of money in their balances. So I didn't want you to think that they were deficit spending. So the issue with regard to the taxing districts, and I want to thank Kurt Wiesen for doing this. He did a lot of painstaking work. He got the list of every parcel that is subject to a drainage district tax and colored them in on these maps. And immediately what you're going to see, what you would expect to see would be a solid filled in area along a creek. And what you're going to see here are some blank spaces and also some things not near the creek. You'll see down here, there are only a couple of parcels subject to it, and then they're just kind of randomly dumped in there. And then you also see areas that look like they're along a creek and along a drainage area that are not subject to it. For example, right here, there's apparently an island. This parcel is surrounded by ones that are subject to South Fork and Canoe Creek, but apparently it is not. So that is a concern there. We'll see something similar with East and South Fork. We've got some parcels here that are not subject to it, and then some that are somewhat removed from what looks like the particular creek area that they're being assessed for. Something similar here with ISOM, South Fork and Slover. For example, down here, we have that parcel there that is actually subject to South Fork and Slover, and then some not subject to any. And then again, some islands in there surrounded by parcels that are subject to the tax.
Mr. Gold, before you go any farther, can you talk a little bit about how this might have occurred over the years? Our thoughts on what might have happened.
The working theory, and there are a couple, but probably had to do with large farms, 500,000 acre farms that were subdivided, either whether it be among family or through arm's length transactions where somebody just said, I'll keep the tax bill. And so the entirety of the $15 tax bill stayed with the owner of one of the parcels, and that's how some of the others may not have been. I don't have any proof to that, but that seems to be the case. Also, there are situations where you could imagine that if there was a sale as part of the horse trading, somebody could say, well, I'll tell you what, I'll keep the ditch tax on it, or I'll keep paying the ditch tax. Who knows how all this happened, but we really see it with South Fork here. We've got some areas way over here. This one is subject to South Fork, and it's not particularly close to any other. These, there are, like I said, some just kind of random parcels that are subject to these. And we see that again here with Beaver Dam. Way up here, we've got one parcel, and then all these parcels in between not subject, finally one subject to it, and then a lot more before you actually get to the meat of the district, but there's still a whole lot of blanks in there.
And to reiterate something you said, sorry to interrupt, but the current ditch commission, this is not their fault.
No, absolutely not.
This is not the fault of fiscal courts who really don't have purview over the ditch commission, but this happened over the course of decades. And we all have theorized that because of the small amounts of taxes assessed, that maybe people didn't care enough to keep track of this very well or lodge complaints. But yet here's what we find ourselves dealing with. So I'll let you.
It certainly didn't get broken overnight, and it certainly won't get fixed overnight. And this goes back. I mean, these issues are a couple of generations at least old at this point. So, you know, it is likely not the fault of anybody living today that this happens, and certainly we're not casting any blame on anyone for this occurring. We just felt it was important for the fiscal court to know what had been found. And I know the judge and Mr. Wiesen had identified this issue going back a while, and that's why Kurt was working on this, and then that's why I wanted to incorporate his maps into this presentation, because it is a distinct challenge for the current Drainage Commission moving forward. Either you know, there are people that could be upset because they're either subject to the drainage tax and not anywhere near the ditch anymore, or you are paying, and your neighbor who lives right next door to you or farms right next door to you is not subject to it. Either way, there's some inequities there that need to be addressed if the commission is going to move forward, especially if they're going to start using that ability to enter upon lands for maintenance without an easement. If somebody has not paid a drainage district tax for 80 years, and now you're telling them they're part of the district and you're going to start moving your heavy equipment onto their land, that could get very ugly. So it needs to be clear what those districts are. Here we see Lick Creek, similar situation. Isom Pond, also we have some isolated areas here, and then some not subject to it. Elam Flat, similar situation. One very, very far south of what seems to be the meat of the area, but then a whole lot of the area not subject to it. So we felt this was just important for you to know. So I know you're thinking, okay, Steve, that looks like a big problem. Fix it. How do we fix it? Well, it's like I said, it didn't get broken overnight. It's not going to get fixed overnight. This is a gargantuan project, potentially. Currently, there are 333 affected parcels. There are 285 taxed by one district and 48 taxed by two of the districts. And one of the issues is that we found a few of the, and I say we, Lawson, found a few of the original boundaries, but they weren't necessarily done by modern legal descriptions. It would just say, for example, I'll pull one of these out. It would say a landowner's name. For example, you might have Mrs. Arch Johnson's land. And it would have several of these. And first of all, we've only found a couple of these for the multiple districts out there. We suspect some of them may still exist in the county records, and we suspect that some may be lost to time. You're looking at just figuring out what those original boundaries were. That's going to be a very in-depth project for someone to be involved in, because it's going to involve not just looking at the minutes of the Drainage Commission, which some of those do exist, but I think they stopped. We don't have minutes at some point from the 1960s forward, or at least not that Kurt had available to him. And then you would also have somebody would need to look at the fiscal court minutes, which largely all of those were handwritten and not indexed. So they could be in there. And as Magistrate McCollum has pointed out in the past, some of those records were not preserved when the current courthouse was built. So once you located the boundaries of each original district, then you would have to figure out what parcels existed at that time and figure out, at that time, Mrs. Arch Johnson's parcel, what that looked like, and what the assessment was at that time, if that is available. That's going to involve potentially running maybe not a full title opinion where you would look for liens, but a title opinion where you would take the chain of the title back and look for conveyances and subdivisions there to try to determine what, so that $15 bill that really should have been divided up among 7 or 8 now existing parcels, what portion each of those parcels should be paying of that $15 bill. And I want to be clear, this probably would get us up somewhere in the round of 400 or 500 parcels that are affected by these drainage districts or that are subject to the taxes. It would not necessarily increase the amount of money that came into the district, because we're talking about dividing up the existing bill. It doesn't necessarily create new money. Now, it might create more parcels that would be subject to a higher percentage if the percentage was raised, but that would be up to the commission. I checked with a few title companies around and found out that their minimum that they're doing for the most basic title opinions that would not include looking for mortgages in this situation would be somewhere in the $200 to $250 range. And it would probably take somewhere between 18 months and 2 years for this project. So you're looking somewhere in the $100,000 to $150,000 range to fix these parcel inequities and get them correct moving forward. Of course, that would be something that would have to be put out for bid. Might come in lower than that. Somebody might give you an even bigger bulk discount, but that's just back of the napkin math that we were looking at there. So not great news to end with, but our mission from the fiscal court was to tell you about the legal options to address drainage issues. And there are several of them. Most of them are not particularly modern. The ones that do taxes and have their own funding stream, generally they're landowner generated or require consent of the landowners. Those non-taxing options are more flexible, like that countywide drainage district that Lawson talked about that would work directly on, it would be a creature of the fiscal court and would be funded directly by the fiscal court. That's most flexible, but does not come with its own funding. And then we talked about the challenges that face the current board of drainage. So that is what we have, and I want to open it up to questions.
Before we launch into questions, I want to give a little bit more context too. The members of the current Drainage Commission were shown this presentation yesterday, so they're aware of the information that you just had shown to you. And in fact, Kurt Wiesen and I have been working with the commission for the last, I'd say, 2 years to try to get a handle on their challenges, what they're able to do with the meager amount of money they bring in every year, and what their suggestions might be to better handle the drainage issues we have. We had a discussion yesterday after we showed the Drainage Commission members this information. And if you heard Steve say this, I want to reiterate it, fixing the tax assessment inequities is potentially a $100,000 fix that will take 2 years, potentially 2 years to arrive at, and it will not increase the amount of funding towards drainage ditches in any significant way. because of the nature of the law. So we have some options to talk about with the Drainage Commission, because again, they don't operate under our purview necessarily, but we do have the ability, as you noticed, to dissolve them if we wanted to. I made a suggestion yesterday to the Drainage Commission as one point of conversation, and we would work with them to do it. But considering the cost and the potential return on that tax assessment fix that Steve described, I suggested that we move towards potentially dissolving all the districts, eliminating those ditch taxes, and then working with the existing flood mitigation board to provide funding for both helping with Canoe Creek and these ditches out in these districts through money from our general fund. We can afford to do this, and it would allow us to give even more money than they generate now, significantly more money. And by pulling it out of the general fund, theoretically, people from throughout the county, all taxpayers in the county, would be helping fund this work. And the equity of that appealed to a lot of commissioners, and the increased amount of funding that we could provide for cleaning ditches and maintaining ditches also appealed to the commissioners. The question of access came up, whether maintaining the districts in order to take advantage of the law that allows work to be done without getting easement agreements was attractive, but it would mean keeping the commission intact. And I could not imagine a scenario under where we could keep the commission intact and not fix the taxing inequities that exist. That was a big sticking point. Moving to the mitigation board, the flood mitigation board, to help tackle this, while kind of help solve the taxing inequities of the commission, doesn't help with the access. We would have to get easements in order to get on ground or ditches to do work. But the experience of the flood mitigation board, with very few exceptions, is that getting those easements, getting that permission to get in ground and do work has not been all that difficult. So that's something to weigh as we have this discussion. One of the models that I introduced yesterday was that under the flood mitigation board, we could develop a subcommittee that would focus simply on the ditch projects that the current commission handles now. And that committee could review projects and make recommendations to the flood mitigation board, which would then approve work to be done using funds provided by the county out of the general fund. Meanwhile, the flood mitigation board could also continue to focus on helping alleviate flooding involved with Canoe Creek. It would mean that they would have to expand the scope of their mission statement a little bit, but that could be done. That is one option for us. As Steve and Lawson spelled out, there are others. I think we have to work in close cooperation with the commission. Dissolving the commission is, I don't think, anything anybody wants to take lightly, but considering the challenge of those tax assessment inequities, I'm not sure how we can act any other way. To spend $100,000 or more just to keep $7,000 total coming in every year, the commission can't afford it. And I don't think the county wants to go down that road when there are other more cost-effective plans that we can adopt. So with that, I will stop talking and open it up to Mr. Gold or anybody else who has questions for him.
Judge, one of the concerns I have are the easements we would have to get. That could possibly end up costing us way more than $100,000 because greed will take over. Where people's not going to allow us access and we're going to have to buy easements.
One option we have there, Magistrate Southard, is condemnation. If we determine that it's absolutely vital to both the safety and welfare of the county that a ditch be cleared, for example, that is an option that we could use to make sure that we can get on that ground and do the work necessary, or the flood mitigation board could.
Brad, I've got a couple of points I'd like to put out there. I think it would cost more than the $100,000 to do this. I did title work, and I think probably a lot of these records are lost, which is going to make it even more difficult. we did this when we were working on the old precincts, and those lines went to Mr. Smith's property. And this, I mean, and I'm sure the legal descriptions are so poorly written back then, it would be extremely hard to read. You could get a guesstimate, but I don't know that you could say this is it. I mean, I think that's going to be hard to do. I think that as far as Tim getting the right of ways, I think we ought to do that as people need things and they want, it's affecting their property. Just like whenever somebody wants something on the roads, I've been preaching this for a long time. When somebody wants something, that's when you get the easement from them. If you want me to put a new culvert in your front yard, you want me to do some work, you want me to widen it, you want to do this, that's when you get it. Use peer pressure to get it. I mean, just like when we had the bridge and the 80-20 bridge project back 20 years ago, one farmer of 4 held out and wanted to be paid. We stopped the project, put weight limits on the bridge, and when the farmers had to drive around and couldn't get through, they would come bitch to court, and we said, go talk to Farmer Jones. He's the only one holding this project up. The next year, Farmer Jones, after his friends and buddies had gone to him, he came along and gave us the easement. You got to work it and do it. If you start paying for it, you can't afford it. I mean, and the same thing for the roads and the ditches. You can condemn it if you absolutely have to, but I would just as soon not have to do that. I think, Brad, you've done a good job on this. I think your ideas are correct, and I think we need to probably move in that direction. I just think it's too expensive for $7,000. It's been messed up. It's and Kurt and Steve and your office. I just think this is great. I would like to have a copy of that presentation if I could.
Absolutely. I would also note for the court, we kind of skipped over it when we were talking about that countywide surface drainage district. There is a statute out there that says that any county may remove any ponds, pools, or swamp marshes or reclaim swampland that may cause sickness in the county by ditching, levying, or cleaning out logs and brush that may cause any creek to scatter or form pools of stagnant water. The cost shall be paid for out of the county levy or by taxation of the property in the county subject to taxation for state purposes. When the fiscal court undertakes such a project, it may acquire for the county by contract or condemnation any land necessary to carry out the project. So there is something that if it creates a health risk through standing water, mosquito breeding or whatever it may be, that does allow the fiscal court to go in and clean some things out. Generally, you wouldn't have to condemn property just for ingress and egress, theoretically under that, but we could not find any published cases under that statute that really talks about what the limits of the county's ability would be there. Now, if we were building a new ditch or building a retaining pond or a levee, then obviously that would require some sort of condemnation. But obviously, if we did go down that road, that would take a lot more research.
And of course, condemnation is the last option I'd ever want to use. But yes, we do have options. And I do think that this past large rain we had in June may have shown some landowners who might initially balk at allowing some cleaning work to be done on ditches on their ground might change their mind, or has changed their mind a little bit, soften them. But maintaining our ditches is going to be a forever proposition for this county. It will be work that will never end. One important note to you, Master Southern, you notice that we're not talking about changing the watershed districts.
Yes.
You're familiar with the
Pond Creek
watershed district in your that would not change. That would not change under the plan I just discussed. If we wanted to change the watershed districts, that's a separate question. And as you know, the watershed districts are able to levy taxes with inflation in mind. It's an ad valorem tax, so it can increase in a way that the ditch commissions cannot. So that will be something for the watershed district boards to consider in the future. But focusing on the ditch districts, I think Magistrate McCollum's point, again, is well taken. Having done a lot of title work, it's a long, hard, expensive slog to get this right for a return of only $7,000 a year, which we also all know is pretty inadequate for taking care of our ditches. So what I'd like to suggest is that if you would allow me to work with the commission and the flood mitigation board to begin some conversations about this and work together to arrive at some sort of solution, I'd like to do that. And any of you singularly who would like to help with that, be happy to have you. But we're going to have to all get around the table and figure this out. And it may take some months to come to an agreement, but we have to do it. And I think the commission, from their reaction yesterday, understood that something has to be done as well. So.
Brad, the city,
Well,
the city would still help with that they've been helping financially as well, have they not?
Yes, and I'm not suggesting they stop that. I'm suggesting that in addition to that combined work on Canoe Creek specifically, that's their interest, as it should be, that we also contribute money out of our general fund to help with ditches that are farther out in the county. And I don't think the overall expense to our general fund would be that significant. Currently, we contribute anywhere from $45,000 to $65,000 a year for helping the mitigation board either work directly on Canoe Creek or match grants that help with Canoe Creek. If we added another $40,000 to $50,000 a year to help with the drainage projects that the commission is currently overseeing, we could do that pretty easily within our budget, very easily within our budget, and bring much more money to the table to get work done. Again, vetted by a subcommittee of the Flood Mitigation Board under my suggestion that could inform the mitigation board as to what's needed out in the county. And then the Flood Mitigation Board would have the final say on approving it and then bidding it out if necessary or arranging the work to be done on behalf of fiscal court. And both I and Magistrate Southard sit on the Flood Mitigation Board, so we would have input into that final decision as well.
I would also like to look into the watershed also, because it's basically the same thing we're running into now. We've got people that touch some of the watershed things that's not being taxed, some that are. So the way the taxing is being done is not actually fair to the citizens either. And it could clean it up. This cleans that up, at least makes it fair across the board.
We could do a little research into that situation if you want us to, Magistrate Southard, or the watershed district boards themselves could find that information if they wanted to. I'm sure Kurt Wiesen and Andrew Powell would tell you how to do that.
Oh, I just created myself a job, didn't I?
The tennis ball is on your court.
I will. I'll follow up with that because it is a concern, especially in my district. A big part of my district is affected by that.
For those watching, again, these watershed districts and drainage commissions are kind of their own entities, make their own decisions, not under direct purview in their day-to-day decision-making from fiscal court. But as Mr. Gold spelled out, we do have the ability to dissolve them. We have a path to that. But I would want to do that only with the agreement of the commissions and the Flood Mitigation Board as well. So.
Steve, I've got one more question, if I could. What did Union County do? Did they do a countywide? They had a referendum and passed a tax of some sort. What did they go under? Do you know?
You know, Judge, I believe they have some watershed conservancy districts. I spoke with their county attorney yesterday. And I'm sorry I called you Judge. Magistrate McCollum. I had 10 years of calling you Judge. Sorry. Apologies to Judge Schneider. But my understanding from speaking with their county attorney is that they don't have any independent drainage districts that are in any way under the aegis of the fiscal court. It's my understanding that it's all a watershed conservancy districts.
Okay, but that can grow income and they can pass what they
Yes.
need to. Yeah, okay.
And I would say, back to what Judge Schneider was saying, that, the best policy of if moving forward, if we had our druthers, and if we could wave a magic wand to make it happen, the best thing would be for the taxing districts, the drainage districts to be well-defined, know their boundaries, all the taxes being fair. And then even if they're only bringing in the $7,000, the county through the Flood Mitigation Board could make grants to the districts for projects. So then the districts would have the ability to get in and get out. The problem is getting to that is going to be incredibly costly. And that's where it's going to be a cost benefit analysis that the fiscal court's going to have to do.
Can I make one more suggestion, that you also send this presentation to our legislators, because the laws need to change. That, setting something off at 10 cents or 50 cents per acre, 100 years ago, it's just not, they need to do something with the laws to amend it, to make it more equitable and make it where we can change some things, because it needs to be fair to everybody. What we've got is a mess. So
there was a lot of discussion with the drainage commissioners yesterday about potential changes to state law.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Again, thank you, Steve. And if it's amenable to all of you, I'd like to begin to work with the commission and the Flood Mitigation Board to eventually have a meeting and discuss this. If any single one of you, or maybe two of you, just to avoid a quorum, would like to join those conversations, please contact me after the meeting and we can make that happen.
Do you want to mention on that, Brad, or are you just happy with us just concurring?
I think just concurring, we'll begin to have those discussions.
That's fine.
Anybody else have any thoughts about that? Okay. We have a couple other bits of business to take care of, and I noticed that Master Barry is not in the picture. We need to wait for him to return. He might be in the restroom. But with that, I will ask Amy to come on. We do have an agenda item for detention center reports, which won't require any kind of voting action until Master Barry returns. Amy, are you still on with us?
There he is.
There he is. Amy, are you still on with us?
Yes, sir.
Anything to report? We're going to talk about your other issue here in a moment, but any general reports you'd like to give?
No, sir. We're just rolling along out here, trying to do the best that we can with keeping COVID out of our facility. And I'm watching them clear the trees off of Canoe Creek, and it's very nerve-wracking watching them go up and down. So other than that, we're good.
Really commend all your efforts on keeping an outbreak from hitting the jail. It's extremely important, and I know you're working diligently at that. And hopefully there'll be some erosion control done on Canoe Creek behind your facility. So keep us posted on that. With that, I'd like to go to Brenda real quick for our fund transfers and claims, please.
The fund transfers are as presented. The actual transfer is reallocating an appropriation within the existing budget to accommodate additional temporary employees for the November election, and this occurs within the clerk's budget. The two cash transfers are allocating the proceeds of various activities to the funds that actually incurred the expenses. Any questions on the transfers?
Make a motion to approve.
A second.
A second.
We have a motion from Master McComb, a second by Master Putman. Any questions about transfers? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, Brenda?
Okay, you have your bank balances after paying claims today. The day-to-day appropriation lines should be at approximately 25%. I do have some additional claims to add to those that are already presented. From the general fund to the ambulance service in the amount of $35,462.68. This is for the fourth quarter reimbursement and will come from the ambulance service appropriation line. To Staples in the amount of $652.59. This is for clerk office supplies and will come from that appropriation line. To Datamark in the amount of $4,065.88. This is for the 2020 tax bill preparation and is to come from the clerk's tax bill prep appropriation line. To the United States Postal Service in the amount of $5,566.98. This is to forward to Datamark for the tax bill postage and is to come from the sheriff's postage for taxes appropriation line. Also from the general fund to Magistrate Moran in the amount of $2,156.30. This is for training incentive, will be and is to come from the training incentive appropriation line and is to be paid with the October 1st, 2020 payroll. The last is from the road fund to Rogers Group in the amount of $214,988. This is for Ohio Drive Blacktop and is to come from that appropriation line. Are there any questions about these or any other claims that have been presented?
A motion to approve claims?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Master Putman, a second by Master Moran. Sorry, Master Southern, didn't quite get in there.
That's okay. He beat me.
Any other questions on claims? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we have one final bit of business and quickly before we're going to go into executive session here, I'm going to entertain a motion going into executive session based on negotiations over real estate. But I want to say a couple things before we go. And I apologize to a couple of our people who might have planned to make statements, but I'll make them for you. For Bill, work on Ohio Drive continues. It's getting very close. Should be finishing that up. It's gone very smoothly. Great work on his behalf. I know Bill's sitting there, but we gotta get going. Number two, Teresa Childers has been hired as our new Parks and Rec Director. We welcome her, look forward to working with her. She filled a position that's been open a bit. We all send our prayers and thoughts to the family of Reverend Anthony Brooks, who was a pillar of this community, a civil rights warrior in Henderson County and Evansville, longtime school administrator and school teacher and principal in Vandenberg County. Just one of those people that helped make a town and a county what it is. And he passed away Sunday. Again, we really are thinking of his family, Adrian Brooks, especially. And there will be visitation at 7th Street Baptist Church, I believe, from noon to 7 Thursday, 4 to 7 Friday at 7th Street. And then they're going to have a funeral at Memorial Baptist in Evansville on Saturday, I believe. That's the plan, but double check the paper perhaps for those exact arrangements. Again, thinking of him quite a bit now. With that, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session. Mr. Gold, I can't remember the exact statute, but it has to do with real estate negotiations.
KRS 61.8101B, deliberations on future acquisition or sale of real property by a public agency when publicity would be likely to affect the value of a specific piece of property to be acquired for public use or sold by a public agency.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go into executive session based on the KRS Mr. Gold just read. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? We do not anticipate having any action done after we come out of executive session. And I'd ask Mr. Jacobs to please take us off Facebook Live for the moment. And anybody not with fiscal court or Jailer Brady.
Moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Master McComb, second by Master Moran.
Did you get that on Facebook Live for Kurt or for Brent?
I got it recorded.
Okay.
So we're back on Facebook Live now. We're out of executive session. Thanks for your patience today. Long meeting, a lot of information, but I think it was all good information. I admire your intestinal fortitude here, one of our longer meetings. So with that, I don't know, I'd like to get on with the day. I know some of you may have good of the county. Unless anybody has something specific, I'd like to adjourn, but does anybody have something specific for good of the county? With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Judge,
Oh,
hey,
go ahead.
Judge, can I say one thing?
Yeah, sure.
All right, the only thing I have is the country club. The country club, we've been doing a sidewalk project out there, which they were in dire need of repair, and I'd like to thank Bill, Hubie and his crew. I've had a lot of good comments from the country club about that project, so that's all I have.
Thank you. Good to hear. Anybody else?
Move to adjourn.
We have a motion by Master Putman and second by Master Southern. He finally got in there. I'll take that. And all those in favor can sign off. Thank you very, very much. See you soon.